Hello and welcome. My name is Rachel Coletta, and in today's video, I am going to be talking to you guys about forgiveness. I thought that this would be a great follow-up to last week's video, which was titled, Does Hell Exist? And I answer that question and talk in detail about a shamanic journey that I had where I visited or went through the perspective or realm of hell. And any perspective, we are powerful creators, so any perspective that we hold for enough time or we give enough attention to, we can manifest into reality. And I think that it is probably a fair statement to say that all of us have an aspect of ourself, or maybe even a feeling of our entire self, that has spent some time in the perspective of hell or is currently dwelling in the perspective of hell. No illusions of perfection here. I know that I have certainly had that experience and those experiences. We can think of ourselves as humans as made up of multiple different aspects. So if there are things in your life that are unwanted or that are causing pain or misery, it is likely that there is an aspect of you that is subscribing to this reality. To understand more about that, definitely go back and watch last week's video about if hell exists and what it is. I will link that down in the description below. But I wanted to follow that up with a video about forgiveness so that we can use this healing salve, this healing balm of forgiveness to ease and heal those aspects of ourselves that have created or bought into or are dwelling in that perspective. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you guys about what forgiveness isn't, what forgiveness is, and my recommended practice and perspective about how to forgive. Might be a little bit unconventional or a little bit different from what you've heard in the past. So I really hope that you guys enjoy it and that it is helpful to you. Let's get started. So to begin, let's talk about what forgiveness isn't. Forgiveness is not absolving responsibility. It's not negating a need to create sacred space, meaning negating a need to create healthy and loving boundaries for yourself. And this can include or incorporate up to even, no contact with a specific person, if that is the boundary that an aspect of you is requiring to feel safe and lovingly held. Forgiveness is also not forgetting. I know a lot of us had the experience as children where if, another kid had done something that had hurt us or upset us, and then that child was forced to apologize, and then we were forced to give that child a hug and say, it's okay, I forgive you, even when we still felt hurt. So forgiveness is also not suppression or bypassing our feelings and emotions or creating that healthy space for ourselves when it's appropriate. Forgiveness is also not condoning harmful, hurtful, or damaging behavior. Forgiveness is not more spiritual. This is a really common form of spiritual bypassing where we feel like in order to be more spiritual, or even there's blatant messages out there that in order to be more spiritual, we need to forgive. I've seen memes that kind of, I think in an unhealthy way, support this idea or this viewpoint. Forgiveness is also not a decision. You don't just decide to forgive someone and that makes it so. That again is the suppression and the bypassing. So this is really important. I want to tell you that the pain, resentment, anger that you might feel in response to a pain or a trauma or an injury is not unfounded. And I also want to validate for you that none of those feelings make you less deserving of love or acceptance. They don't make you less worthy, and they certainly do not make you less spiritual. So now that we've discussed what forgiveness is not, I want to talk about what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is coming to a place of natural release of feelings or impulses of retribution, punishment, or revenge towards others through self-forgiveness. So yes, you heard me right, through self-forgiveness. So I'm going to get into this in a little bit more detail in a moment here, but the practice that I'm going to suggest, that I'm going to lay forward for you guys, that I believe is the most healing and the most honoring of your emotions and your experiences, is approaching forgiveness through the process of self-forgiveness. When you approach forgiveness in this way and you work on forgiveness directed towards the self, forgiveness of the other, the person outside of you who might have been the trigger of this pain or trauma that you experienced, will come naturally. That won't be an effort or something that you need to work towards. Once you've reached a place of complete self-forgiveness for the aspects of self that are connected to the traumatic experience or the injury, it will be a given, it will be an effortless sort of domino effect that forgiveness towards the other will occur. I'm going to explain this in a little more detail here. But first, I also want to mention that forgiveness is also allowing grief. It is also allowing those feelings of blame or anger or rage and asking to be held in a container of divine love while you feel those. So for me, when this comes up, what I like to do is actually go out somewhere in nature and connect to my angels, my spirit guides, whatever, the loving energies of the trees around me, whatever you feel the most connected to and you feel the most comfortable drawing on and requesting support from, and ask to be surrounded and held in a container of divine love while you let yourself feel and express any of those feelings of anger or resentment or blame or rage. If you need to scream or yell, if you need to let out some word vomit, whatever you need to do to really feel like you can drop into and honor those feelings, I definitely recommend doing that. And then while you're doing it, asking to be held in a container of divine love. This can help to mitigate any feelings of guilt that might come up in response to experiencing these feelings. That still might happen, and then you still might need to address that guilt, but being asked to be held in love while you feel these very human and express these very human emotions in a way where they're not directed towards somebody, but they are taking responsibility for your own emotions and dropping into those emotions, is very helpful and healing. All right, so going into more detail here about the how to forgive and this self-forgiveness, which is really forgiving yourself for ever thinking or believing that what happened was about you. When we've experienced trauma or injury as the result of an interaction or experience with someone else, there is, almost always unequivocally going to be an aspect of ourselves that holds that self-blame or that shame or that guilt that there was some sort of action or belief or something that you did that led to the interaction or the incident where this injury or pain or trauma occurred. And really, it's forgiving this aspect of yourself that holds any of the blame or shame or guilt that you have carried. And I'd like to also share that part of my experience with this process and why I'm recommending it to you is that I had definitely many aspects of my childhood that were quite traumatic, and my way of coping to be able to human with these traumas that I had carried forward involved some pretty extreme methods, including a pretty severe eating disorder that I had for about 17 years. Definitely what I would consider to be excessive social drinking, anxiety, depression. I had some low registering OCD, a lot of things that came up in my attempts to try to cope with some of these experiences. So I want to share that with you guys so that you know where I'm coming from and that you can see that this process really does work. And also to share with you that what I found was that trying to reach a place of forgiveness by going directly to working with the people that I had had interactions with that had resulted in this pain and resentment and anger that I had held and buried, really didn't get me where I wanted to be. It seemed to just only bring up either disassociation or more pain and resentment, and was this kind of like vicious cycle or circle. And when I really started working on self-forgiveness, that was when I noticed that the needle hugely moved with my feelings towards those that I had had these experiences with. And as I mentioned before, when you reach a place of self-forgiveness, it is really just kind of an automatic next step in the process, where forgiveness for the other person or people opens up, and you're able to come to that naturally without putting a bunch of effort or energy towards trying to move that boulder. I want to talk to you guys about specifically what I've done to work with that, and that is with using Ho Oponopono. So I don't know if you guys have heard about the legend of Ho Oponopono, but it is a Hawaiian legend with Dr. Hugh Len. And as the legend goes, he looked over the files of the various patients at a mental hospital, and he would recite a mantra towards himself while looking at these files. And over the course of many months, patients were released, medication was reduced, until eventually the mental hospital was completely empty. And this is healing through the loving of one's self, or self-healing. Another example of this would be Sandra Ingerman, who is a well-known shaman who's done work with actually looking and measuring the pH of water, polluted water, putting it in a circle of several of her students who worked on sending love towards themselves and self-forgiveness. And through them doing that, she was able to actually measure registerable changes in the pH of that water without actually sending any healing energy or anything towards the water itself. So when we are able to heal aspects of ourselves, when we're able to forgive aspects of ourselves, when we're able to hold parts of us that do hold these feelings in love and acceptance, it absolutely creates this effortless shift towards what we perceive to be outside of ourselves. So this is a little bit more information about how this works. So the mantra of Ho Oponopono, I've heard this mentioned in different orders, but the way that I like to say it is, thank you, I love you, please forgive me, I am sorry. So what you do is you find those places of you that are holding the blame or the shame, the resentment, guilt, anger, desires for retribution or revenge, and you get quiet. Find a time or a space where you can get quiet with those aspects of yourself, and you recite and repeat Ho Oponopono over and over and over. You can time yourself and start with maybe 3 minutes, work up to 5 to 7 minutes, and I encourage you to start with all 4 sentences of the mantra. Thank you, I love you, please forgive me, I am sorry. And after you've done that for 1 or 2 of your sessions, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, you can check in with yourself, and if there are certain sentences or certain aspects of that mantra that feel triggering, or they don't feel resonant to where you're at or what that part needs to hear, you can omit them. So there have been times where just saying thank you and I love you have been what's felt best to me, or there's been times where just saying, I forgive you and I'm sorry have been what has felt best to me. And again, you're saying these towards these aspects of yourself that need to hear it, that have needed to hear it from someone, and you're stepping up to be that person that is giving those aspects what they need to hear to heal. And you're also allowing the other parts of yourself that might feel judgment towards those aspects that are holding these feelings to soften and to integrate, so that they can all come together as a whole and not be in judgment or disassociation with each other. So let's see here. Is there anything else I missed? Yes. So when you have healed and forgiven these aspects of yourself, what you will find naturally occurs is what I like to call and consciousness as it relates to forgiveness. And what that and consciousness is, you'll remember at the beginning of the video I mentioned that forgiveness is not forgetting, and it is not negating the need for healthy boundaries or whatever you need to put into place to make sure that you feel safe and loved and cared for. Rather, it's coming to a place where you're able to hold these almost two competing viewpoints as true, and there's a peace in the holding of each, meaning that you can say to yourself, you know, this occurred, it was painful, and I understand that this person was also in pain. Or this occurred and it wasn't okay and it really hurt me, and I understand that this person was also hurt. And so you are able to reach this effortless place of this and consciousness where you can heal your own pain, and you can also see the person who was the catalyst for the trauma or pain as a whole person, as a spectrum, and not just as a specific role of the propagator of this trauma or injury. So that's the point that I've found that I've been able to reach, where I've received a lot of peace and lightness on my forgiveness journey. I sincerely hope that this is helpful for you guys. Like I said, I wanted to put this information out there after the last video so that if you identified with any aspect of that perspective regarding hell, you had a clear way forward to transmute that and to move the energy. So please let me know if this was helpful for you guys in the comments below. If you have not already, subscribe, hit like. You can also hit the bell button next to the subscription button so that you're notified anytime I put out a new video. And thank you so much for being here with me today. I wish you so much love and peace and expansion on your forgiveness journey. All the best. Bye.